gosh, there's our
Oh my
background.
gosh, I love that it takes grit.
Oh my God, I love your true grit and grace. Are you kidding me? We are like on
Oh
point.
my God.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the It Takes Grit podcast. Oh my gosh, like the first 5 minutes of this podcast, just between me and our special guest today, have been unbelievable. You can probably see if you're watching it on YouTube the alignment between the two of us. It's absolutely crazy. When I jumped on and I saw the background, I was like, "Hey, do we live in the same home?" So I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Amberly Lago. You probably already know her because she is just she's incredible. She's everywhere right now and she's on everybody's podcast. And I'm just so grateful that she's given us her time as well. But she's actually a leading expert in the field of resilience, right? And, it's all about grit and grace, which is why there's just so much alignment. And I know that you guys are going to love this episode. She's the best selling author of True Grit and Grace, and she empowers people around the world by sharing the story of how she turned a tragedy into a triumph. Here on the It Takes Grit podcast, I'm all about sharing somebody's story so that you can listen and you can be like, you know what? Me too. If she can do it, me too. Amberly is a former professional dancer and athlete, and she's here to bring us a new perspective on what it takes to have perseverance. So, Amberly Lago, welcome to the It Takes Grit podcast. I'm so grateful for you.
Oh my goodness. I am so grateful for you. And can I just say how much you are so amazing? And I was thinking about the first time I met you. And we actually met. I had my no makeup, hair in a bun, uh, glasses on, and I was in a hotel gym. And I look over and I say, I'm like, who is this gorgeous lady over there working out? Then I was like, oh my goodness, I think I know her from social media. And I realized it was at Candy Valentino's event. And we were both early in the morning before the event started. We were in there working out. And I just got to connect with you. And I just really want to acknowledge what an amazing light you are. And I can see why so many people love you. But you are the real deal, as my daughter would say, legitness. Like you are beautiful on the inside and out. And what you see on camera is the same person that you get off camera. And I just really, this is the highlight of my day. And thank you for this opportunity to be on your show. I'm so excited.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I remember that it was like early in the morning. Like I just had barely had my contact lenses in, and I just see you over on the step mill. I'm like, hey. And then it was just so great how we just get put together in these amazing rooms. And I'm excited to be able to spend more time with you in 2024 and beyond as well. So we're just getting started.
Yes.
So, for people who don't know you, or maybe just know you a little bit and not really deep and dive into your story, like take us back to. I know there's a tragedy. Everybody has those moments in life where there's that big turning point. But
Mhm.
your life before this event happened, which we're going to get into, what were you doing? I know that you were a professional dancer and athlete, but where did you see your life before this event occurred? Like, where were you at? Just take us back to Amberley before the incident.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that I so connect with you because of the fitness and all that you do. And by the way, I'm so impressed by all the newsletters that you send out. I get all of your newsletters. I'm very impressed with all that you do. And I was in the fitness industry. So I went from dance to I was sponsored by Nike. I was in Health Magazine and Shape Magazine and Fit Pregnancy. And I was regularly contributing articles to these magazines for exercise tips. But not only that, I had other trainers that I employed, and I had a whole program where I helped trainers prepare for the certification and get certified and then run their business as a trainer. So my whole life was fitness. All of my clients were word of mouth. I lived on the gym floor and I had no social media. I didn't even own a computer. Like everything was literally on the gym floor. All of my records, I was old school, was they were handwritten, and here you go. Let me give it to you. And so it's been a big change for me to be like sitting here on Zoom call. I didn't even know what Zoom was, and I'm being completely transparent when I say I didn't own a computer. When I had this idea to write a book and I started telling people, I think I wanna write a book, they're like, "You're the fitness girl. You can't do that. You don't have a college education. You don't even own a computer." But I had this vision where if I could share a little bit of what I went through and the traumas and how I got through it, that I could give hope and inspiration to others, and that would really transform my pain to purpose. And so I think it's really important. And I want to share as much value as I can with your amazing audience. So they know that they can get through hard times, but they can also, everything that happens to us is not happening to us, it's happening for us. And if we just stop and go, okay, what's the lesson? What's the blessing in this? And I know that sometimes it's really hard when you're going through like an authentic catastrophe and you're like, how can there ever be a blessing in this?
Mhm.
So there's always, and I've learned from some pretty horrific trauma and tragedies that have happened to me, that it has led me to where I am now, led me to get to be right here with you right now. And so there's always a way to get through those situations. But my life was so different before being in the fitness industry and modeling, and then to where I am now to, my nickname in the gym was legs. And then to have my leg completely deformed and scarred up, it was a big transformation that took a long time for healing and a lot of therapy and a lot of reading books and a lot of self-discovery and awareness to get to where I am now. So I don't want people to think that, oh, it's just been easy. You got through some hard times and here you are. It's
Yeah.
like I still go through those hard times.
Absolutely, and we're going to unpack that because before the incident, you were a gym trainer, you were a model. What was the idea that you had for your life? Like, what did you think it was? What you were going to be? Because I just realized in all of life challenges that we go through, and it's so true. It's not happening to us; it's happening for us. Something happens that changes or pivots our life that gives us a much bigger purpose, and we might not understand at the time
Yeah.
because that's why I want people to understand is like, hey, this thing that's challenging that's happening for you is actually putting you on the trajectory to what you're meant to do. And I have to
Hmm.
believe that that's true because otherwise, I think that you drive yourself mad when something challenges happening. You're like, why? Instead of going, oh,
Exactly.
awesome! Like, thanks for this interesting scenario. So, but the beginning, your idea was, I'm going to be this model. I'm going to be a trainer. That was your vision, right? That's where you thought that you were going to be.
Oh, my business was booming, and it was finally, I really thought, wow, I have finally, after years
Got
of
it.
building this business up, it's finally, this is what I want, because I love working with people. I love seeing that transformation in them, whether I was working with a client or whether I was working with another trainer and they were kind of under my wing and I was taking them through the process of how to run their business. I loved it. And you might know who Corey Everson is because of being in the fitness industry, but she was 6 times Miss Olympia, and she did this whole like testimony. She basically qualified me for my training. And she was like, look, Amberly was in the prime of her career, but she was a baby. I feel like she was just starting, because
Hmm.
being able to be called by, Body by Jake, come do an infomercial with me. Can you write another article in health fitness for us? Can you write another article in shape? Write another article in in fit pregnancy? All these things. And when you would walk into any CVS or Walgreens, I was hired for a vitamin company. So you would look and I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's my picture and my
There
daughter's
I am
picture
again.
on vitamin labels. And so I imagined that that's what I was going to do. I was going to continue on that fitness journey because I loved it. And, after I had, something life changing, a horrible accident, I kept trying to get back to what I was doing. I kept trying to, because if you look in the dictionary, resilience means to bounce back. I don't think it's to bounce back. I really think it's being open to go, okay, well, maybe there's something different for me. It's choosing the courage to live a life of joy and happiness no matter what happens. And so for me, everything changed when I was like, well, I keep trying to go back to the fitness. I was literally killing myself. So what changed it all for me? Um, I think it was I've had a total of 34 surgeries on my leg. And this was probably, I don't know, surgery number 28 or something. And I'd had a major surgery on my foot and ankle, and I was in a boot. And I'm at the gym, and my husband happened to be working out at the gym where I was training clients. And I was training a client, and I was walking across the gym, and my stitches had busted open, and I was bleeding out across the gym floor. And he was like, "What are you doing? Like, you are literally killing yourself," because I would give it all that I had for those clients, and I'm bleeding out on the gym floor, and I'm get home and I'm in so much pain. I couldn't be a good mom or wife or even be good to myself. And I thought something's got to change. And it was a really, really tough decision. But I think that anytime that you're not happy or you're struggling or you feel stuck, it's very important to stop and ask yourself, well, wait a minute, what brings me joy? What lights me up? What
Mhm.
is it that I would do every day, all day, even if I didn't get paid for it? And for me, w- I think a lot of times it comes from something you did even when you were a little girl. And when I was a little girl, the thing that I loved was every time I would dance, people would light up and they would just get so happy and they would start dancing too. And I mean, I remember going to the Dairy Queen after the football games when I was 5 years old, and they had put me on top of the tabletop, turned the jukebox on, and I would dance. And I would see the room just light up, and I did it not for the claps or for me, but I did it because I could see how it lit up everybody and they would dance and have fun, and I thought, "Well, I still wanna be able to work with people, but how can I work with them in a different way?" So that's when I got certified to be a life coach, and I thought, "Well, I might not be able to stand up on my feet all day. I don't wanna be bleeding out across the gym floor, but how can I still help people transform their life?" So I started doing one-on-one coaching, and that's been a journey, to change that,
Mhm.
and there's been a lot of learning along the way, but I think that when you get in complete acceptance for where you are, who you are, what your circumstances are, you realize your circumstances don't have to define you, but your resiliency will. And if you just stay open and say, well, maybe this isn't working, but what if something bigger and better could happen for me and for other people if I just get out of staying in this little box and think, well, what else can I do? What if I could make a bigger impact in a different way?
That's so true. It's funny when you said bounce back. Do you know what? As soon as you said that in my head, I was like, it's actually bouncing forward, right? You're
Yeah,
not even bouncing back. You bounce forward. And so I want a lot of people to understand, and that's why I want to bring it back to like where you were just before the accident happened, is that sometimes, and actually most often, you're actually like on top. Life is going so great. When you
finally.
get through the biggest, like I always find it, if I look back at my life, when have I got the biggest curveballs? They've always been when I'm like, oh, everything is going great. It's like, this is awesome. Everything's starting to, fall into place. And then boom. So take us back. Your face is all over CVS. You're the vitamin girl for everybody. We say vitamins in England, right? You're the girl. You're everything is going great. Take us back to the day of the accident. What happened?
Oh, well, you know what? That day was a great day. I had trained clients. And I had a workout partner, and we ran 11 miles in our best time, and I beat him. And I was like, "Yeah, I finally beat him." Like, "Yeah," and so I remember leaving the gym, it was a holiday weekend, and getting on my motorcycle, and I was putting my helmet on, and my friend Jennifer looks over at me and she goes, "Hey, be careful out there." And I was like, "Oh, I will." And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit longer way home just so I can enjoy that California sunshine and feel the wind through my hair. And I'm cruising down Ventura Boulevard on my Harley, and this SUV shoots out of a parking lot. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Like, there was no time. I basically let off my clutch, tried to turn, tried to jump off my bike, and thank goodness I did get up in the air a little bit because I was T-boned, um, thrown 30 feet. I'm sliding across the asphalt, and the whole time I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness," I didn't know what I was sliding into, so I didn't know. I was like, "Please, God, don't let another car hit me," because I didn't know if I was sliding into oncoming traffic or what. Finally come to a stop, and I look down at my leg, and it is crazy, Rebecca, to look down at your body and see it completely just mangled. Like, my leg was broken into pieces. My foot was dangling off. It was only held on by skin. There was blood everywhere. I didn't realize at the time my femoral artery was actually severed. And I mean, one of the first thoughts in my head was, well, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. So I was already thinking, like, okay, how am I going to
Game plan.
continue to work? How am I going to continue to take care of my clients? How am I going to keep a roof over my head, keep my business going? And then one of the thoughts I had was, oh man, my husband's going to be so mad at me. I took his new backpack and a client brought me some pulled pork, and I had a Tupperware of pulled pork in my backpack. Let me tell you, that pulled pork and that backpack probably saved my life because it was completely disintegrated because that's what I slid across the asphalt on, and it was gone. Um, I remember being, the paramedics got there really fast. I remember being in the back of the ambulance, and I was alert for this entire thing and in so much pain. And I had a brand new, and you'll appreciate this because you're a fitness friend of mine, had a brand new hot pink Lululemon jacket on, and they were trying to cut it off, and I'm like, "No, no, no. Don't cut my jacket. I can get this off." And I'm like trying to take my jacket off. Little did I know the whole back of my jacket was gone. Like, I had road rash on the whole back side of me when you're sliding across the asphalt. I had no idea. And I remember squeezing that paramedic's leg and thinking to myself, man, this must be a little more serious. Am I dying? Because he won't even make eye contact with me. Like, I just wanted to get some sort of like, hey, look at me. Everything gonna be okay? And we got to the ER, and the room was filled with cops. So my husband is a lieutenant with a highway patrol, and news travels fast in the brotherhood and sisterhood of the police force. And so there were so many cops, so many friends in the ER, and my husband was freaking out, crying hysterically. I'd never seen him cry. He's like a big, strong guy. And I was like, oh my God, I seriously might be dying. And I was like, I need to make sure he's going to be able to hold it together for our daughters. We have two kids. And so I yelled across the ER. I was like, honey, I need you to get over here and be strong for me. And he came over and he held my hand. And that was the last thing I remember. Of course, I couldn't see what was going on. The reason he was freaking out was, I really haven't shared this on a podcast, but the reason he was freaking out, I learned later, was the surgeon who was he was a specialist, and he kept trying, my femoral artery being severed, he kept trying to pull the femoral artery out so he could clamp it and try to retach it. And my husband said it would snap back into my leg and he would lose it, and there was blood everywhere, and he'd reach back in and try to pull that femoral artery out to reattach it. And that doctor actually saved my life because he's the one that reattached my femoral artery. I was put in induced coma because when your femoral artery is severed, you lose so much blood. And literally, I had a guardian angel, a guy who made a tourniquet on my leg right away at the scene of the accident. He saved my life. I wish I knew who that guy was. I have no idea. No idea. He just disappeared. But he saved my life. The doctor who put together my femoral artery, and put in induced coma a little over a week later, I wake up, and the first thing I learn is, hey, we are so sorry. Your leg is like a war wound. We need to amputate your leg. Um, it's completely disfigured, crushed. There's nothing we can do. You have a 1% chance of saving it. And in that moment, all I heard was, You have a 1% chance. And I was like, okay, well, we need to find a doctor who is willing to take that chance with me. And, when I was in a coma, they were going to go ahead and amputate it. My husband was like, no, you are not amputating her leg. I want her to wake up with both of her legs and that to be her decision. And so to this day, my husband still says, you know what? You've got both of your legs because of me. And he leaves me like little sticky notes. Just left me another one. I don't even want to show you what that one says. But I am grateful. I am grateful for him because we did find a doctor and got transferred, and it took 34 surgeries. It'd be a day of surgery, a day of recovery. It was like being at war. And every day I was preparing for battle and trying to be as strong as I could mentally, spiritually, physically. And that's where the grit comes in. And I think every hard situation that we go to, it is an opportunity to strengthen our grit, to strengthen our resilience. And so just that's just to share a little bit about what happened. And I'll tell you one other thing real quick. I really thought the worst was over. Being an athlete, you know how to push through pain. Like things are hard. You just keep going, you keep pushing through. And I think being an athlete gives you the mentality of you can do hard things. But I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and I thought the doctor would be so proud of me. And I was upright on crutches 4.5 months after the accident. So I'd been completely bedbound. And finally, to go from being in the best shape of my life, doing infomercials, being sponsored by Nike, to now I'm covered in bed sores. The back of my hair on my head was falling out because I was stuck down to a hospital bed for so long. Couldn't stand up, couldn't even use a bathroom on my own. I had to use a bedpan. My main goal in the beginning was just to be able to stand up long enough to be able to use a bathroom on my own and not use a bedpan. That was my first goal. And so I think it's real important to set small, attainable goals that you can achieve and then celebrate those victories along the way. But I remember going into this doctor, and he took one look at me, examined me. He said, "Are you the kind of girl that likes to push through pain?" And I was kind of like, well, yeah, he can tell. I got a PhD and suck it up. Look at me. I'm standing up. Like, can you tell? And he goes, well, you need to stop. You need to stop right now. You've got something very serious. You've got a nerve disease and it's incurable. It's ranked highest on the pain scale. It's called, at the time, it was called RSD. They've since renamed it to complex regional pain syndrome. He said, your life's never going to be the same. You're never going to work again. You will never walk again. You need to go home and get back in your wheelchair. And I was like, back in my wheelchair? Okay, well, for how long? I'm like, give me a goal. How long do you need me to stay there before I can get better? How long? He goes, no, forever. You're you're done. Like you're done. And I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. And I didn't go home and get back in my wheelchair. I went straight to physical therapy. And Terry, my therapist, was like, what are you doing here? You don't have an appointment today. I had an appointment 5 days a week, and this was on a Saturday. I come in on a Saturday. He's like, you don't have an appointment today. I said, yeah, Terry, I just learned something. And if I want to have the life that I've always imagined, I'm going to have to work harder than I've ever worked before. And I didn't know how hard that was going to be. And the lessons that I've learned along the way, yes, I learned about grit, but also had a lot of misconceptions about grit. And that's where the grace comes in, the grace of God, and also the grace that we give ourselves, and just the importance of community, which, Rebecca, I know you know the importance of community. You have a huge community that you have built that I'm so inspired by. And I think that we're stronger together, that we don't have to do it alone. Like it's okay to ask for help and be vulnerable and go to therapy and read the books and
Mhm.
admit that we do need help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it must be, I mean, is it traumatic for you to share it each time when you get asked these questions? How does it make you feel every time that you have to kind of relive that? Does it
Well,
feel, obviously it's a little bit easier now than it was, but I don't think it'll ever be easy.
yeah, well, it always surprises me that like sometimes when I'm sharing my story, there are certain parts that I share that still make me cry, that still get to me. Like After the accident, every time I closed my eyes, I would see myself getting hit. I would see my leg in the blood, and it was very traumatic. I didn't sleep much. Um, I actually had my husband on my podcast. I begged him to be my first guest on my podcast. Finally, after it was like our 100th episode, I begged him. I was like, "Can you please be on the podcast for the 100th episode?" That is still the most downloaded episode that I have on the show is the episode with my husband. And he got very emotional again sharing. And I think that because I've done a lot of therapy and because, um, I got sober and I have a sober community that I connect with every day and I still go to recovery meetings. I got sober in 2016. I turned to alcohol as a way of self-medicating. Was never a partier or drinker, and then after trying so many treatments for pain that didn't work, I turned into a full-blown alcoholic. And I think being able to get sober and share with that sober community and close friends, that enabled me to start to share more, like on podcasts and things like that, and also realizing this is not about me. This is about the people that I can serve and that I can help. And, I think that helps a lot, but I just wanted to say, I think it's really important to share from a scar and not an open wound, because if you start sharing something that's very hard or traumatic or vulnerable and you haven't done the work around it, or you haven't started to share with a somebody that you feel safe with. Being safe is so important to me. Like just feeling safe to share is so important to me. So I think it's very important before you start to share your story. We all have a story, but really do that work and take the time. My accident happened 13 years ago. I went through hell for 6 years. 6 years. I wasn't on social media. I was living in a cave. I was going through some dark times, and, it took 6 years, and so I want people to know that look, you don't go through a hard time, then all of a sudden everything's better and you're starting to do a blog post and you're posting on social media and being on podcasts. Like, no, it takes every day at a time, one day at a time, being intentional about getting stronger mentally, physically, and spiritually for you to do those things. And also being consistent with your own healing, and then once you decide that you're like, okay, I want to make a difference, I want to help other people, then what are your intentions? And getting very specific. And I knew, like I thought I want to make a difference. I don't know how to use social media, but I better figure it out. And so I leave my crappy post up from when I first started. Didn't know what a hashtag was, didn't know what I was doing. I leave those posts up so people can see we all start from somewhere. And my main intention was I just want to build community. I want to add as much value as I can. And some of the people that I have met on social media that I've met from the very beginning, we still comment on each other's posts every single day. You know what I mean? And I've been able to meet them when I've traveled. And a lot of times people think, oh, social media, that's a love hate thing, or I hate it. I don't have time for it. I know it can be stressful. I know like some days I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to post something. But it has been a blessing for me because it's enabled me to connect with people all over the world that I wouldn't be able to connect with unless I had social media. In fact, I have somebody from India coming to stay with me. I have been working with a graphics designer for the past 4 years, and his daughter is coming to stay with me for a month. I never would have been able to meet her all the way from India had I not been on social media. So I know that's a very long-winded question, and I
No, that's
tend to get
perfect.
off
I think
track.
that's so true. Social media can bring people together. I've been on social media for 10 years. And just a little side note here before we just unpack, because I know that there's going to be people right now who were where you were for that time in 6 years. I think that's what we're going to go back to in just a second. But in terms of social media, I think 10 years ago, when I was on social media the first time, it was so positive and it was a really happy place. And I think that there's people like you and I are still going to make a huge difference on social media. And I think we actually have to work harder now on social media because of
Mhm.
cancel culture and because of the amount
Yeah.
of negative people that there are online. Like, I don't say this lightly when I talk to my community. I'm like, do not dare to post something negative. Do not even think about commenting on somebody else's post like something negative. Because unfortunately, we've got to a point where it used to be 99% positive, but now social media has become 99% negative because unfortunately, that's how the majority of the world thinks. And we love cancel culture, and bad news
Crazy.
is the thing that spreads. I mean, you do a post about something happy, you get what 30% engagement is if you posted something that's like super traumatic. Everyone's like, me too, me too, me too. So, I
Yeah,
think
isn't that
it's
crazy?
you post something negative, you get so much more engagement and comments. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I'm just glad that there's still people like you and I who are like, you know what, I'm committed to keep spreading positivity, even though I believe it's more challenging now than it was, 10 years ago. But thank you for all the
Yeah.
work you do. You have an amazing community. That are there. I see them. I see the love. I see everybody. And it's so great that you've got your graphic designer's daughter that's coming to stay with you for a month. Back to that 6-year period, because whether you're in that, I don't know if you want to call it funk or stuck or just kind of like you feel like you can't move forward. You're not bouncing back, right? You're just bouncing up and down and not really going anywhere. But if someone's in that motion right now, right? They're like, hey, I've been in this for 2 months or 2 years, or maybe it's like, hey, I've been feeling like this for 10 years. What is the first step that someone can take to get them out of that situation? Because you went from being this fitness model to then 6 years of turning to alcohol to cope
Hell.
with it, to now
Yeah.
being one of the leading speakers and being on all of these podcasts. Like, what was the first decision that you made to start to make a shift, right? Because we can't change our life overnight, but we can change the direction. So what was the thing
Mhm.
that you started to do to change that direction to help you get to where you are?
Well, I just want to say that's such a great question because I was like seriously at my lowest point. Like people think like me being in the hospital and going through surgery after surgery after surgery was the hardest thing, and it wasn't. It was when I was living out of a bottle. Like I had so much shame because I remember trying all these treatments. And I mean, I had ketamine infusions, spinal stimulator where they implant metal leads into your spine to try to block the pain. Spinal radio frequency, the main side effect of that is you can become paralyzed. Like I was on 73 homeopathic pills a day and 11 prescription medication and nothing was working. And I remember having a glass of wine and going, golly, this really helps. It helps me kind of numb out the pain and stuff down my feelings. And I remember thinking, wow, this isn't the healthiest thing to do, but if this is what I have to do to get through this, then I guess that's what I'll do. Well, one glass led to two glass, led to three glass, led to a bottle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a problem. And I got to the point, honestly, where I was thinking, my husband deserves a better wife. He can find somebody else. My kids they can find another mom. Like I just need to like exit out. I didn't want to live, but I was too scared to die. And there was a moment and I just got on my knees and I prayed. I said, God, I need help. And that gave me the courage to reach out to, it was a former client I have. And I knew she was sober. And I said, hey, man, I think I got a problem. I need help. And she goes, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to take you to a meeting. And I waited around for a week for her to call me back and take me to a meeting. And I never heard back. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like, I really need to go. And I remember telling my husband, I think I got a problem. He goes, you don't have a problem. Anybody that was dealing with as much as you're dealing with, you lost your career. We got a lien on our house. We have $2.9 million worth of medical uh, like expenses. You are in so much pain. Anybody would drink. And I was like, but I knew deep down that I had a problem and I needed help. And so when I didn't hear back from that friend, and I only share that because you know what? Sometimes people aren't able to help you right then, and it's up to us to help ourselves. And so I got on Google and I started researching 12-step recovery programs, and I found a meeting that I could go to that was when my husband was at work and my kids were at school, and I was going from sneaking my drinking to now I'm sneaking going to recovery meetings. And the thing is, I think if you're struggling with anything, if you're not happy with something, if you're having a hard time, it takes courage, but you got to take a good, hard look at your life. And you have to accept where you are, who you are, and decide that you want something different. And I was willing to go to any length to get my life back so I could be an example of resilience to my daughters. And so the scariest thing I ever did, scarier than any surgery that I went through, was being outside that recovery room and seeing these women walk into that room and going, well, that must be the place where they're all alcoholics in there. And I'm like, what if somebody recognizes me? And I'm like, dude, they're all there for the same reason. I walk in that room and I went in the back of the room in the corner and I sat between, no joke, sat between a nun, like she was in a full nun outfit, like literally a nun and a cowgirl, girl, cowboy hat. And I'm like, well, my gosh, if a nun can be an alcoholic, then I guess I can too. And I had to sit on my hands because at this point I was so dependent on alcohol. My hands were shaking. And in that room, I heard hope and I heard people share my story and I heard God speak through so many of these women. And I kept going back and I kept going back. And little by little, one day at a time, I started to get my life back. I started to let go of the shame. You know, when we shine a light on shame, it disappears. And when you are in complete acceptance for who you are, for past things, mistakes that you've made, guess what? No, when you accept those things, nobody can use them against you. It's like, yep, I'm an alcoholic. I know. It's a disease. And you know what? That's why I still go to meetings and I take care of myself and I read out of the big book and I do what I can to help others and be of service. But I think the first thing you got to do is ask yourself, how's that working for you? Is it helping you or is it hurting you? You got to get real with yourself and you got to decide and you have to know that nobody's coming to rescue you. It's up to you. Like you have to be willing to do the work and take the action. And once you do that, then you can change your life. Once you realize you have a choice, you take your power back. Once you realize that it's not your circumstances that define you, but it's your resiliency that does, you get to be in the driver's seat. You get to take action steps with grit because it does take grit. It takes grit. But you have got to take that step one day at a time.
I think, oh, that's, you could not put that better. I mean, and the thing is, sometimes, we raise our hands for help and we might not get it the first time and then we just quit. We give up. It's like, no, like you then have to find, it needs to come from inside to keep on showing up. I talked about this all the time. Like there's three ways to show up. Number one, you show up, but your body's in the room, but your mind's not there, right? You're like
Yeah.
you went to that first meeting, like physically you were there, but like you weren't there mentally, right? Then the next
I
time
was freaked
you're
out.
freaked out. You're just like, but you got your body in the room. And that's the first part is sometimes it's that it's the changing of your physiological state. Second, I tell people is great. Now you're in the room. The next time you go, your brain's going to be with you, right? Because as you started to go to these meetings, you're now more present, right? You're like, okay, I get it. And then the third way to show up is you're there, your brain's there, but then you start to bring people with you, which is exactly what you've done. But you had to show up for yourself first. Even you just getting your physiological body, which at the time your body was still hurting and in pain and still is, I know to this day, but you got yourself in that room. And I think sometimes a lot of people feel like they have to have it all perfect. They have to be perfect before they start something. They have to have it all perfect before they go into that room, right? You
Mhm.
have to have it. No, you just need to start it first, and then the rest is going to come. And then because you kept showing up, your brain started to articulate what was going on. You were able to be that vehicle for all of the people that you've inspired. And I'm sure you've inspired people to go to the meetings too. But because you showed up yourself, that's what the
Mhm.
ripple effect was. So well done for having the courage and the grit to do that, because I do feel like a lot of people just, the victim mentality, we give a lot of credit and attention to the victim mentality, and you've really been that empowerment and kind of stepped forward and been like, you know what, it's not easy, but I'm still showing up. What's your pain like today? I know that you said you've had all of these different types of treatments, but how does your leg, how does your body feel, on a day-to-day basis 13 years later?
Um, I'm still a mess. No, I still have pain every day. In fact, one of my really good friends just texted me this morning. He's like, I never heard back from you. What's going on? Like, you never got back to me. And I'm like, I am so sorry I didn't get back to you. I was like, I've been a mess. I just went to Costa Rica to try a new treatment that went horribly wrong. And it really was a big setback. And I was a mess. And you know what? Like I said, we learn from everything that we go through. Like, it's like, what is the blessing? What is the lesson? And I actually learned a lot through this process. I'm writing this new book, and actually, the intro to my new book is about this experience that I just went through like a week ago. So, I had an infection. Sometimes when you have CRPS, like, it can bring your immunity down. And I had a severe infection, and I went to urgent care, and she's like, hey, you really need to go to the hospital and get IV treatment. She goes, there's one medication we could try and see if it helps. It's strong. It's Cipro. It's going to be for 10 days. The side effects are horrible. You could burst a tendon, and more research is saying how horrible it is. And I'm like, okay, I can't be in the hospital, so give me the Cipro. I'll take a chance with a tendon bursting, but I got to go do 3 virtual events like right now. So come on, like, let's get this medicine. I go pick up my medicine at the pharmacy. I take it on an empty stomach, and I'm like, I'm just going to grit it out. Like, yeah, it takes grit. I'm going to grit it out. I know how to grit it out. I give all 3 virtual events, like, and I've never given 3 keynotes back to back. It was a lot. And you know how much energy goes into when you're pouring into an audience, and there was Q&A after, and I was like, okay, haven't eaten. I'm on this medication. My body is literally fighting this infection. I have a fever, and I'm like, okay, I have one more thing to do. I'm going on Instagram to help somebody promote their book. And so I'm fighting, fighting, fighting. Had a little downtime. I thought, well, I'll have time to rest later. Let's get on this live. I get on. Oh my gosh, Rebecca, I crashed so hard. I was so embarrassed and so humiliated because my body, I was pushing, pushing, pushing. And it was like, oh no, girl, you got no grit left. Like, it's done. Like, now we're going to shut your brain down. So you're not even going to be able to talk. So I get on this live, and I'm like, out of it, like, kind of like slurring my words. I don't know if it was a reaction to the antibiotic or what. It was awful. So I get off, and I'm like, I just got to lay down. I didn't even make it to the bed. I made it to the sofa, and I slept from like 7 until 7 the next morning. I was out. The lesson I learned in it is like, look, your impact is only as strong as you are healthy. How can I be a good leader? How can I inspire others if I'm not taking care of myself? And why is it that I can grit it out, but I don't give myself enough grace? And I really had to dig deep, that there was this deep seated belief that I wasn't worthy of getting the compassion or the self care, or I give it to other people, but why is it that I'm not feeling worthy of giving that to myself? So it was like an eye opening experience of, okay, I need to sit down and figure out, like, what are your non negotiables? Like, I know for me, I need to work out. I need to have my gratitude practice. I need to connect with God and pray. I need to have time with my family. I need to have time out in nature. These are the things that help me mentally, spiritually, physically, so I can fill my cup and then I can pour into others. This was a big wake up call because I was like, I'm writing a book about joy for the journey, and I'm literally like killing myself again. What am I doing? If I'm going to write a book about joy, I better sure as heck spark some right now. And so it's really been, I think, like, you go through all these things and you go, oh, woo, I am learning a different lesson. I'm
Mhm.
learning another lesson right now. And so now I have like little reminders all over my computer. I actually even have this little stone and it's got a frog on it. And frog reminds me to fully rely on God because I get so into like self-will. I got to do this. I got to grit it out. And what I've realized is grit without connection is resistance. Grit with connection is where you find resilience. And that's connection to yourself, to your heart, to your soul. That's connection with your higher power, who I call God. That's connection with your community. So, if you really want to be resilient, you need to make sure that you're connecting with your community. You don't have to do it alone, that you're asking for help, that you have, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are trying to get fit and you're in Rebecca, you're taking all Rebecca's, you're in her app and you're taking all her lessons and doing all her challenges, like that accountability is key. Having that community is key for resilience.
I love that you share because the thing is, I somebody wrote this in my high school yearbook. They said Rebecca is a bullet with butterfly wings. She knows exactly where she's going, but she'll get there with grace and style.
Oh,
And I think that isn't that just like I don't know if it's from a lyric from something, but that was written in my yearbook like 20 years
oh
ago.
my
But isn't that but
goodness.
that reminded me of you, like you are too. You are a bullet with butterfly wings. You're gonna you know exactly where you're going, but that you'll get there with grace and style. And I've I feel like sometimes, people might look at you and be like, "Oh my gosh, like it's all together. She already knows everything." There is no ever limit, right? There's no ever there's always something and you're like you feel like you've got it all figured out. Even with things in your business, you're like, "Why did I not do this 10 years ago?" Or "Why did I
Yeah,
not decide to do this 6 months ago?" Or "How did I just get this idea?" But the only reason or the only way I believe that you get those ideas and you evolve is by taking some sort of action. You
exactly.
decided to take
Exactly.
action to go to Costa Rica to try something new. It didn't work, but it did give you the intro to your book. So I too like I lean on my faith to be like God and the truth always rises, right? God always prevails.
Hmm.
The truth will always rise of what you're meant to be. And if you lean into that, knowing that all of the dots are already connected and looking at the silver lining of everything, I think
Yeah,
we get so hard on ourselves because this didn't work out. Well, it didn't not work out. It just didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to work out. But
exactly.
God, universe, whatever you believe in, they've already have a plan for you. And if you just like take a breath and be like, oh, this is just how it's meant to be. You don't get your knickers in a twist, right? You don't get your trousers all mixed up, and you're kind of just enjoying life a lot more because that's really what it's all about. But I do emphasize this to everybody is that health is so important because if you are, feeling like a 7 out of 10, you're not going to give the information that you want. It's better to take a 30-minute or an hour break and recharge your body, get yourself to a 10, and then you're going to be better, moving forward. So, thank you for sharing that. You don't always have it put together and you're trying to do a virtual Zoom. I remember last year, I'm trying to give a speech on positivity. Like it was the last thing that I was feeling positive about, but I was like, nope, I got to get on feeling positive. I got through it and then, crashed on the sofa afterwards. But it is having that balance of the grit and the grace which you clearly have. Tell me a little bit as we close out today because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Tell me about your new book. You're writing it, it's new. When's it coming? How can people get access to it?
Oh, well, I think that, do you know John Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, I love John and Catherine. She's like one of my best friends. He's actually speaking. They're both speaking at my event. So I have an event in Dallas, April 19th and 20th. And They're speaking at the event. I'm so excited about that. But I was talking to John, I think it was maybe it was when I was on his podcast, and he goes, Amberly, I have the name of your new book. He goes, he's written like 26, 28 books. I don't know. Uh, he's like, I'm really good at titles for books, and your next book should be Joy Through the Journey. And so I literally, like, look, here's the sticky note right here. I have had this sticky note on my computer that says Joy Through the Journey. And I was like, okay, that'll be my next book. And I thought if I ever get a publisher, like I'd like to do it different. I would love to have Wiley publish my book. And I am not kidding you. Wiley Publishers reached out and said, hey, we're interested in doing a book deal with you. Can you give us a proposal for a book? And I was like, let me whip something up. And so I took a couple of days and literally wrote an outline, chapter titles, everything. It just kind of poured out of me. And so started writing the book. I just have the intro, I just have the outline and stories that I'm going to tell. And it's really to shift your mindset, to embrace the present moment and really build resilience, but in a joyful way. So you can just find joy on the journey because that's we're meant to experience joy, and we can have pain, but we can choose to build upon the joy, even though we have pain or hardships or struggles. And so I've started writing it, and it's kind of scary, but I have to tell you something really funny. So I go in the other room, I'm like, oh my gosh, Johnny, that's my husband, Johnny, they said, yes, I got a book deal. And he's like, oh gosh, when are you going to have time to do that? And how much is that going to cost? And I said, honey, no, it's a book deal. They're paying me and I will make time to do this. Like, this is important. But it's just so funny because he is not an entrepreneur. He's retired and he sees what all goes into my business, like the whiteboards all over my office walls and what I'm doing. And he's just like, oh gosh, what is that going to be like? And but I'm super excited and I'm honored. And I think that, you know what, if we have that idea, don't let it go. Like, it's there for a reason and it'll happen when it's supposed to. But the book is coming out in 2025 and we'll see. I'm going to really start working on it after I have my annual summit. And this year it's in Dallas. And so I've been really putting that all together. I've got speakers that are coming in from all over the United States and people that are flying in from all over the world to be there. And so I'm really focusing on making that an exclusive, intimate, amazing event. And then I told the publisher, I was like, you guys, I promise I will be so into the book as soon as I get, done with the event. So I'm excited. I'm really super excited
Awesome.
and
Well,
nervous.
congratulations. Well, correct. That's huge. That's so awesome. Congrats on getting that. That's no easy task. But the joy through the journey, it's so important. I've even learned, the last, couple of years, it's like not being attached to the outcome. Because if you're so attached to the outcome, you forget to live in the joy because you're trying to like predetermine what's going to happen. And then you miss the day, you miss life because, you want to
Yeah.
live every day as if it was your last because you just never know when that day is. So
Yeah. And
congratulations.
thank you. And it's hard because I still question myself. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is this book going to be are people going to like it? Like, oh my god, I want to do a good job." And then I'm like, "What story should I include?" And like, "Is that the best intro? Should I change it up?" And then turning that stuff into the publisher and waiting for the editor to get back to you. I'm just like, do they hate it? Like, is it bad? Like, oh, so I don't
It's
know.
it's gonna be
Um,
exactly what it needs to be. It's gonna be exactly what it needs to be. I just know
Thank
that.
you.
Mhm,
Thank you for that. Yeah,
mhm.
like I have asked other authors before. I'm like, when you wrote your book, did you have like times where you were scared or had self-doubt or like, oh my gosh, and I can't believe this is happening? I think I've only had one other author say, no, it just poured out of me and it was easy. And I'm like, seriously? Like, this is kind of hard.
Mhm.
This is hard, but I'm doing it. I'm
And you
making
gotta remember to
time.
have joy in that journey.
That is exactly what I remember, and I remember when I first started my speaking career and I was freaked out and I was on my way to go do this big keynote, and my dad said, "Amberly, remember, this isn't about you. This is about the people you serve. And he said, just remember to enjoy the journey, is what he
Mhm.
told me. And I was like, that's so important. Like sometimes, my husband will be like, Amberly, stop taking yourself so seriously. Like have some fun. And I'm like, yeah, like gratitude definitely helps me with that too.
Mhm.
And by the way, you were at the top of my gratitude list today. So I have a group of ladies. We call ourselves the God Squad. And I practice gratitude. It helps me shift my mindset. It helps me shift my perspective and focus on what's good. And I really believe gratitude is alchemy. And so I write 10 things that I'm grateful for every day. And Rebecca, I just want you to know that you were like top of the list that I got to see you and talk with you today. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. I'm just so honored and thank you for sharing your story. I know that there's so many people that are going to get so much value for this. For those people who are listening and watching, where can they best find and connect with you, Amberly?
Well, I would love to give your listeners something that I use every single day. Like it's something I literally use every single day. I've developed a methodology called the Pacer method, and it helps you tap into your resilience, whether you're experiencing anxiety or fear, or you're sad or feeling stuck. And so, this methodology, I've put it in a free downloadable playbook. And if you just text me the word grit. That way I'll know you heard it on Rebecca's podcast, but just text the word grit to 818-214-7378. You'll get that free downloadable playbook. And I hope that it really helps you to keep moving forward, to bounce forward. Amberly Lago is where you can find all upcoming events, information about my mastermind, my podcast, too. I want you to be on my show really soon when you're back in Dallas. But yeah, and Amberly Lago Motivation on Instagram. But yeah, just text me that. And that's really me texting you back. So some people are like, is this really you? I'm like, no, it's really me. So sometimes it takes me a little while to get back, but it's because I love connecting with others. So yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that. And I'm going to put all of the details. If anybody missed that, all of the details are going to be in the description below. And make sure that you go give Amberly a follow, go give her some love and how you enjoyed this incredible podcast. So, again, thank you so much for giving up your time.
Oh,
We are
thank
so
you.
grateful for you. Guys, if you're not already following the It Takes Grit podcast on Instagram, make sure you follow there and then just share this with one person today who you know that is going to get some value and just needs to hear this message. So enjoy the rest of your week, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.